Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Education and Economic Development Subcommittee budget hearing. We're going to be hearing first from the Aid to Community Colleges budget, hearing from budget analyst David Proper. Good afternoon.
The fiscal 27 allowance increases by 2.6% to $518.1 million. Moving to Exhibit 1 on page 5, total fall enrollment has increased each of the last 3 years. From fall 2022 to 2025, enrollment increased by 18.3%, or about 17,000 students, but is still below the level seen in fall 2019. Exhibit 2 on page 6 displays full-time equivalent student, or FTES, enrollment from fiscal 2015 to 2025 for the 3 CADE eligible segments as well as ineligible enrollments, which are primarily composed of out-of-state students. Year over year, eligible FTEs increased by 4.7% in fiscal 2025, reaching about 78,000, which is 20.7%, or around 20,000 FTEs less than in fiscal 2015. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows that the 4-year successful persister rate reached 76.4% with the 2020 cohort, the highest in the period shown. The Maryland Association of Community Colleges, or MAC, should discuss the reasons for the increased persister rate with the 2020 cohort. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows that college-ready students and developmental completers in the fall 2020 cohort graduated or transferred in 4 years and persisted at significantly higher rates than developmental non-completers. Exhibit 5 on page 9 breaks down the share of persisters and non-persisters in the same 2020 cohort by developmental status. 70% of the 2020 cohort were college-ready compared to just 53% in the 2019 cohort. As a result, college-ready students comprise the largest segment of persisting and non-persisting students. MAC should discuss if placement tests to determine whether students are college-ready or require developmental coursework were different during virtual learning caused by the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the placement system used before virtual learning, and any other factor leading to a notable increase in the share of students determined to be college-ready. Exhibit 6 on page 10 displays the successful persister rate for the fall 2020 cohort by community college broken down by developmental status. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows the proportion of students requiring any remediation declined each year from the 2015 cohort to the 2020 cohort before increasing in 3 consecutive years and then falling once more in the 2024 cohort. In every cohort, more students required remediation in math than in English. Exhibit 8 on page 12 shows that college-ready students in the 2015 to 2023 cohorts completed an average of 19 credits in their first year compared to 12.9 credits for remedial students. Exhibit 9 on page 13 displays the 4-year graduation/transfer rate for white, black, Asian, and Hispanic students. In the 2020-21 cohort, black and Hispanic students closed the gap between all students by 0.7 percentage points each. Exhibit 10 on page 14 lists the average inflation-adjusted community college tuition and fees in Maryland and nationally. Maryland has been more expensive than the national average, but the gap between the two has narrowed in recent years, decreasing from $976 in the 2024 to 25 academic year to $918 in 2025-26. Exhibit 11 on page 15 lists the tuition and fee rates by community college for fall 2025 by service area status, and the non-weighted statewide average for tuition and fees is about $4,900 for a service area resident. Exhibit 12 on page 16 displays the amount of Pell Grants received and total aid awarded by community colleges to students. In fiscal 2025, Pell Grants comprise about 85% of total aid, coming in at $152 million. The amount of Pell aid has increased considerably from fiscal 2023 to 2025, growing by almost 42%. This increase is partially explained by the increases in minimum and maximum award levels, but a significant portion of the growth is due to the number of Maryland community college students receiving awards increasing and their awards being larger on average. Exhibit 13 on page 17 lists the average award amount and number of awards per 100 FTEs at each community college. The total of 22,033 awards totaling $27.4 million were granted in fiscal 2025, with the average award being $1,189. Exhibit 14 on page 18 visualizes the distribution of funding for aid to community colleges after accounting for contingent reductions. The CADE formula accounts for the vast majority at 80.1%, followed by retirement funding at 15.3%. Exhibit 15 on page 19 highlights changes between the fiscal 2026 working appropriation and fiscal 2027 allowance after accounting for proposed efficiencies and contingent reductions. The primary increases are for the CADE formula and retirement contributions. Two things decrease year over year, and that is $300,000 in one-time funding for the College of Southern Maryland and about $751,000 for a deficiency to cover a fiscal 2025 shortfall in optional retirement spending. Continuing to page 20, the CADE formula makes up the overwhelming majority of state funding for the 15 locally operated community colleges, and a major component of the formula is the FTES enrollment at each college 2 years prior, or the average of the second, third, and fourth prior years, whichever is larger. Exhibit 16 lists the FTES enrollment for each college from fiscal 2023 to 2025. Between fiscal 2024 and 2025, 4 schools saw a decline in FTEs while 11 saw growth. In percentage terms, Warwick grew the most at 15.3%, and Garrett decreased the most at 4.5%. Another major component of the formula is the per FTES funding for students at selected 4-year institutions, as 27.2% of that number gets multiplied by the FTES count described previously, and this comprises the base component of the CADE formula. Discussion of the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2026, or BRFA, begins on page 21, and there are 2 provisions which impact aid to community colleges. The first provision limits the growth in community college aid provided under the CADE formula to an increase of 3% over the preceding fiscal year for each community college for fiscal 2027 through 2029. Language in the budget bill contingently reduces funding for the CADE formula by $21 million in general funds based on this. Exhibit 17 on page 22 shows CADE formula funding by year, along with the percentage of aid per FTES at selected 4-year institutions that is used in the formula. Under current law, the fiscal 2027 allowance would increase by 8.6%, or about $34 million year over year, going from about $402 to $436 million. With the contingent reduction, the fiscal 2027 allowance only increases by 3.4%, or $13 million, going from $402 to $415 million. Exhibit 18 on page 22 shows the effect of the 3% cap on each community college in fiscal 2027. Prince George's College has the largest nominal decline, and Warwick has the largest percentage decline. Garrett and Hagerstown colleges are only 2 not impacted by the cap due to the level of their FTES enrollment decline in fiscal 2025. Exhibit 19 on page 23 shows the CADE funding formula with and without the contingent reductions, including a forecast for fiscal 2028 and 29. After a significant difference between current law and the BRFA provision of $20.99 million in fiscal 2027, DLS estimates the provision will reduce funding by about $5.5 million in each of fiscal 28 and 29. Exhibit 20 on page 25 shows that state funding per FTES steadily grew each year from fiscal 2017 to 2024 as enrollment declined, but a hold harmless provision remained. Beginning in fiscal 25, certain formula changes were made, including the elimination of the hold harmless provision, which led to 2 consecutive decreases in per FTS funding. The grant per FTES increases by 3.7%, or $201 from the 2026 working appropriation to the allowance under current law. From the 2026 working appropriation to the allowance, including the contingent reduction, the grant per FTES decreases by 1.3%, or about $70, which is still above the fiscal 2023 level. A separate provision in the BRFA reduces the state share of community college retirement costs by shifting 50%, or $2.3 million, of the year-over-year cost increase to local jurisdictions. This reduction amount will remain constant in the out years as well. The BRFA of 2025 contained a similar action that permanently shifted a portion of the state's share of increased retirement costs in fiscal 26 to the counties. In that instance, it was $4.8 million. However, DLS recommends shifting 100% of the fiscal 2027 increase in the community college retirement costs to the local jurisdictions. Exhibit 21 on page 26 lists the differences between the 50% cost shift in the BRFA and the 100% cost shift DLS recommendation as it pertains to cost increases for each college. The BRFA provision as introduced would shift $2.3 million, whereas the DLS recommendation would shift $4.7 million. Exhibit 22 on page 29 shows there was an 83% increase in total dual enrollments from the 2017-18 and to the 2023-24 cohorts, going from approximately 16,000 to 29,000 students. The grade composition percentages displayed in the chart include students that had course information available. Among these students, grade 12 students fell below 60% of total dual enrollment in the 2023-24 cohort for the first time in the period shown, which indicates more students are dually enrolling earlier, particularly in 11th grade. Exhibit 23 on page 30 lists the composition of high school and dually enrolled students for Asian, Black, Hispanic, White, and all other students for the 2020-21 and 2024-25 cohorts. In both cohorts, Black and Hispanic students are underrepresented among dual enrollments when compared to the overall high school demographics. Between the 2 cohorts, Hispanic, Asian, and all other students increased their dual enrollment proportions, while the proportion of dually enrolled Black and white students declined. Exhibit 24 on page 31 displays the average number of credits attempted and credits earned among all dually enrolled students in the 2023-2024 cohort. On average, about 2.4 credits were attempted and 2.1 were earned. Exhibit 25 on page 32 shows the in-state college enrollment trend of dually enrolled students once they graduate from high school. Generally, over the period shown, these students have been enrolling in community college less frequently and instead are going right to four-year institutions. MAC should discuss how the community colleges support dually enrolled students while they are in high school and how it continues to support them once they transition into college students upon graduating high school. Page 33 contains the recommended action of shifting 100% of the increase in fiscal 2027 retirement costs to local jurisdictions, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Are there any questions for the analyst today? Seeing none, we welcome Dr. Rye from the Maryland Higher Education Commission, as well as Dr. Phillips from the Maryland Association of Community Colleges. Please bring all team members. Thank you.
All right, well, I will begin. Good afternoon. Oh, can you all hear me okay? Great. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, members of the subcommittee. My name is Brad Phillips. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, here on behalf of Maryland's 15 CADE-funded community colleges. It's my pleasure to represent the colleges, and thank you, Mr. Propert, for the analysis with highlighting some of the great things that we're doing. Before I begin to answer the three questions that you've asked me, I have 2 points that I'd like to make around our CADE funding formula. And first, I just want to acknowledge that we understand the very difficult and hard decisions that you have to make as a subcommittee and a committee on appropriations on how to fund the entire state of which we are a part. And we recognize that a 3% increase, considering the financial constraints, is a great place to be considering the budget, the way that it looks. But I would like to talk about two aspects of the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, or one aspect, and then another aspect that I'd like to bring up as well. And the first one is the idea that we want to move away from a 3% cap on the out years. The BRFA itself is designed to help balance the current fiscal year, but the out years, we want to be able to have an opportunity to discuss that in real time, considering our options. And here's the reasons why. With that laid out at the 3% cap, this year alone kind of demonstrates that when our enrollment growth outstrips our funding increase, it puts constraints. It puts constraints on our academic support services, our workforce needs, as well as other things. And you just saw where you had 11 colleges that were growing at different rates, but when it's capped at 3% on the out years, what that really means that if you grow significantly more than your other institutions, you're capped at 3. So you will definitely have to do more with less. And if you do not grow at the same rate or slightly less than 3%, you will all of a sudden have a windfall considering how much CADE funding you will get. And that gap is growing. So even with this year, with the formula that you see as it's capping this increases, you'll see that state support varies per FTE with a varying difference between $2,000 between what the state's supporting. So that's an inequity that we would like to resolve and not push out for 28 and 29. The other issue that we have is the hold harmless. The analysis brought up the changes that were made in 2025, and those changes took effect by stripping out all but 2 of the components in the CADE formula. And what that did is, without being sort of fully tested and vetted, it's created situations where every year since we've had colleges that have grown in enrollment but yet have lost funding, and there's been no backstop. And we would just respectfully request that there be a hold harmless put back in to the formula for the calculations. It has impacted Community College of Baltimore County, Garrett College, College of Southern Maryland, and this year Hagerstown and College of Southern Maryland. You asked the Secretary to respond to a question about the one-time grant of $300,000. Well, that wasn't calculated in the College of Southern Maryland's CADE calculation this year, which shorted them another $300,000 this year. As Hagerstown has grown significantly, they have become no longer eligible for the small size factor, which is phasing out over 5 years. As a result of that phase out, they're actually getting a 3% decline in funding this year. So those are the issues that we would really respectfully ask that you help us with going forward for 28 and 29. With that, I'll begin answering the questions. You asked Mac to respond to the first question about the reasons for the increased persistent rate with the 2020 cohorts. And again, thank you, Mr. Propert, for your analysis, because we have been doing a lot more when it comes to how we help students succeed. And again, some of those are multiple measures for college readiness, which we'll talk about with the next question. We'll talk about accelerated support models, advising and structured pathways and early alert systems, and expanded academic supports. One of the main things, and Maryland has become known for this, is thanks to Peter Adams at the Community College of Baltimore County, we have co-requisite models where students are taking their college level work but have a separate credit where they're getting the developmental needs met as they go through. And that has substantially changed the way in which our successful persistent rate has increased. And again, these indicators are lagging, so you only get to see them pay off after a number of years as students have matriculated through the system. So we're very proud of the success that we've had with our successful persistent rate, and thank this committee for using that as the measure of our student success instead of traditional graduation rates. The second question you asked dealt with Mac should discuss how the community colleges support dually enrolled, skipping ahead. Mac should discuss the placement test to determine whether students are college ready or require developmental courses for students where different during virtual learning caused by COVID-19 pandemic compared to the placement system used before virtual learning, and any other factors leading to the noticeable increase in the share of students determined to be college ready. This is really not something that would be the result of the pandemic. We have really been taking an internal look at how can we place students in college-ready work. Prior, we had perhaps overplaced students into developmental based on a single high instant stakes test, an AccuPlacer, but we are now doing all sorts of different ways in which we're determining college readiness. We use high school GPA, we use transcript reviews, coursework history, diagnostic tools, and placement exams. A multiple way of which we have expanded the opportunities for students to go directly into college level work. And you can see that that is paying off. And the last question you asked about is how are we supporting dual enrollment students? And this is one of the topics that I really wish we could do a lot more. We are supporting dual enrolled students. We have comprehensive advising. We have orientation, tutoring, early college alert systems. We're working with students as they enter our doors, making sure they have the support that they need to be successful. But we really do, I think, need a statewide dual enrollment model. The blueprint has one. However, you have legislation that you just discussed 2 days ago that would continue to limit the number of courses dually enrolled students would take. And it remains one of the most popular aspects of the blueprint. We know that students who are dually enrolled go on and are more successful in college than students who have not participated in dual enrollment opportunities. So we would really appreciate a statewide process for which we could really have an equitable dual enrollment system. And with that, I will stop talking and answer any questions you might have, or let the secretary go.
Any questions for Dr. Phillips? Okay, Secretary Rai.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sanjay Rai. I serve as the Secretary of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I would also like to thank Department of Legislative Services for their very thoughtful analysis. Very happy to see persistent rates and how we place students, and Maryland Community Colleges changed that a few years ago, and I was honored to be part of that process. Despite maintaining a comparatively small administrative footprint, MHEC manages a proposed fiscal year 2027 budget of $891.9 million. The vast majority of that funding supports direct student financial assistance and statewide post-secondary education investments. Community college funding represents approximately 60% of MHEC's overall budget. Of that, 51% is distributed through the Senator John A. Cate funding formula, and 9% supports retirement contributions for the eligible community college employees. On page 17 of the analysis, I was asked to discuss the status of $300,000 in general funds added to the Aid to Community Colleges grant for the College of Southern Maryland under Section 21 of the fiscal year 2026 budget bill. I can confirm the following. The full appropriation has been incorporated into the College of Southern Maryland's allocation within the Cate funding formula and is being distributed in accordance with the statutory disbursement schedule under Education Article 16308. Under the formula, payments are issued in 3 installments, 25% by July 31, 25% by November 30, and 50% by March 31st, following final enrollment reconciliation. Accordingly, of the additional $300,000, $75,000 was included in the first payment, another $75,000 in the second, and remaining $150,000 will be included in the final installment. MHEC confirms that the $300,000 was included exclusively within the College of Southern Maryland's Cate allocation. No funds have been transferred by budget amendment or otherwise, and no additional reporting or release conditions were attached beyond the statutory reversion requirement. All fiscal year 2026 Cate formula payments are currently on schedule and in full compliance with the statutory timelines and budget intent. We sincerely appreciate committee's leadership and thoughtful consideration of programs that expand access and affordability for Maryland students. Continued investment in aid to community colleges funding strengthens our community colleges, support student success, and help meet Maryland's workforce and economic needs. We respectfully urge the committee to maintain its commitment to aid to community colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Rai. Are there any questions for the Secretary? Delegate Grist.
It's just a comment that the 3% cap, what I would like to do during the interim, our office would work with the investment to come up with a permanent solution to that.
Well, thank you very much, Delegate Grist. Funding community colleges is such a critical aspect of growing the state's economy. So being able to have sustainable, predictable funding to continue the services that have allowed us to achieve sort of the successes we've had with our students is so fundamental to being able to continue to do that good work. So thank you.
You stole the commercial away from me. So we do have 2 of our community college leaders here. So just want to first of all say thank you to Dr. Kurtenitis for being here. And also Ms. Maureen Evans is here on behalf of the president of Howard Community College. Who, we want to send our condolences for family bereavement as well. She's not here today. And you each have 2 minutes to also share your thoughts and testimony.
Good afternoon. Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, and Chair Smith and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Maureen Evans, and I serve as the Vice President of Government and External Affairs at Howard Community College. As Chair Smith remarked, our president, Dr. Daria Willis, wishes that she was here, but she is out on bereavement leave. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on her behalf, our students, our community, and our mission. Howard Community College serves nearly 9,000 credit students, 74% of whom attend part-time while balancing work and family and financial pressures. More than 45% of our students are Black and Hispanic or Hispanic, and nearly a quarter of Howard County households are ATLAS, working families who earn above the poverty line but cannot afford basic necessities. These are Marylanders who are directly supported by your investment of community colleges. Over the last 5 years, HCC has increased our transfer rate from 38.7% to 56.5%, which is well above the national community college average. This means that more than half of our transfer-oriented students are successfully continuing to four-year institutions like the University of Maryland, UMBC, and Towson University. These outcomes are the product of intentional design. It's why HCC has built a comprehensive network of wraparound services. Our students have access to free mental health counseling, an on-campus food pantry, 24/7 teletherapy, free public transportation in partnership with Howard County government, emergency financial assistance for rent, childcare, and emergency life expenses, and also tuition support through HCC's Educational Foundation. We provide tuition waivers for students experiencing homelessness or aging out of foster care. We also distributed more than 1,100 Chromebooks through the Maryland Connected Devices Grant. And these are not extras, they are the infrastructure for our students' success. Under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, HCC has expanded dual enrollment access to every public high school. This spring, more than 4,000 high school students are enrolled in our Jumpstart program, which is a 375% increase in annual enrollment since FY 2019. 375% increase.
Please wrap up shortly.
Yep. So we respectfully ask that this committee continue to investing in our institutions that deliver measurable and transformative results for Maryland families. I'm also joined by our provost, Dr. Jonathan Iuzzini, our interim provost and executive vice president, if you have follow-up questions. Thank you so much.
And Dr. Kurtenitis.
Kurtenitis.
I love to say people's names correctly.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for being here.
And thank you, delegates, especially my favorite delegate sitting right over there. Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Kurtenitis, and I am the proud president of the Community College of Baltimore County. And we actually need to thank all of you for your support last year when you had a difficult budget challenge. And we hope that we can persuade you to do that again for your community colleges. In exchange, our colleges offer a strong economic return on investment because everything that we do, everything community colleges do, is workforce development. Our reach is huge, our impact extensive. And since the 1950s and 60s, we have, all of us together have educated hundreds of thousands of accountants, nurses, welders, plumbers, poets, dancers, and so on. The payback is significant, as 93% of community college graduates remain to live and work right in their communities. They get jobs, they buy homes, they pay taxes, they send their children to local schools. And since 85% of them across our state come from economically challenged communities, we see ourselves as Maryland's strongest higher education partner in contributing to the state's equity agenda. Some time ago, an economic think tank called Opportunity America referred to community colleges as the indispensable institution. So last year, we educated nearly 300,000 Marylanders, awarded 30,000 associate degrees and thousands of workforce credentials, and transferred just under 10,000 community college graduates to the university system. In exchange, we happily in exchange for the role we happily play in our state's economic and equity agendas, we respectfully ask for your support for the governor's budget and removal of years 2 and 3 from the BRFA. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the whole entire panel's testimony. I mean, you said it the best. We can't really reshape what Maryland's economy looks like, which is going to need some reshaping and innovation in light of some of the federal realities. We're going to have to reinvent how we do business. And for those who have tremendous skills already, they're going to have to get new skills or enhanced skills. And people are going to be a combination of reskilling and people getting the needed skills of the moment for the current economy. And so I definitely don't think we want to create a disincentive to invite more people into the great educational opportunities provided at community colleges by creating a budgetary pressure that really doesn't incentivize encouraging more of our Marylander population to join this educational experience. So we're gonna have to put our thinking caps on and work together to figure out how to navigate this challenging time. But I do think that we have a lot to learn from community colleges because you're used to being nimble and working with less than what you deserve, and I think there's a lot we can learn about how we can still deliver high-quality experiences for all Marylanders with the appropriate funding levels. So I just want to thank you not only for your leadership, but also for your patience and for your willingness to help us be courageous together. So thank you to the panel. I unfortunately do have to step aside for a moment, but you're in the capable hands of your favorite delegate. I just hope to be the second favorite from time to time.
Well, Chair Smith, while you exit, I failed to acknowledge that we have President Rose Mintz in the audience, who is here in support of CADE and funding community colleges as well, from Carroll Community College. So just wanted to acknowledge. Oh, Dr. Klauber's here as well from Hagerstown Community College. So more president representation. Thank you.
And if there are no questions from Delegate Tolzerei, you're dismissed. This panel is dismissed, and the next panel up
Thank you very much.
is Travis Simon. And Danielle Dorsey, Sharita Bryant, and Christine DeBowie. Sorry if I got your name wrong. And when you sit down, you may begin.
All right, Chairwoman, well, not Smith, but Chairwoman
Now it's
Smith.
only me.
And members of the subcommittee, my name is Travis Simon, and I'm proud to serve as the Executive Director of SEIU 500. We represent over 23,000 workers, including faculty and staff at many colleges and universities in Maryland and DC. Our community college faculty see firsthand how higher education and on-the-job skills training drives success of Marylanders. We commend Governor Moore and the members of this General Assembly for continuing to prioritize education, even with the economic constraints our state is facing. Maryland's economy and workforce development rely heavily on the high-quality education our community colleges provide, and that quality depends directly on fully funding the CADE formula. We understand the looming budget deficit might make you hesitate to fully fund CADE. However, funding cuts to our community colleges will cripple our economy for years to come. That's why we were asking you to also reinstate the hold harmless component of the CADE formula for the next fiscal year. For the past couple of years, the BRF have removed this provision. Now, without it, some of our colleges are actually seeing their funding drop, even as their student enrollment goes up. At the same time, funding increases are being capped at 3% for the next 3 years. We ask that this cap be stripped from the BRFA for fiscal year 28 and 29. This instability in funding makes planning budgets, maintaining vital programs, and supporting student outcomes unnecessarily difficult. It is simply counterproductive to cripple workforce development at Maryland's community colleges right now, especially when national economic and education policies are shifting so dramatically under the current administration in Washington. To sum it up, we ask this committee to prioritize fully funding CADE, reinstate the hold harmless provision, and maintain your commitment to Maryland's community colleges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next?
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the committee. My name is Danielle Dorsey. I work as a lead custodian on the Essex campus at the Community College of Baltimore County. I have worked at CCBC for over 31 years, and I serve as a proud member and president of AFSCME Local 3376. In my role at CCBC, I am responsible for creating and maintaining a safe and healthy environment for students, staff, faculty, and the public when they come onto our campus facilities. Our members take pride in the work that we do and strive every day to make a great environment in our facilities. At the same time, we have challenges that impact our work. We deal with high turnover of employees at our work site. Many new employees leave due to the lack of competitive compensation for our workload. With the amount of turnover we have, it makes it difficult to accomplish our work. One person may be covering 2 to 3 areas in an 8-hour shift that should be covered by 2 to 3 people. When we don't have enough staff to cover all of our work areas, the impacts are seen by the public using our facilities. We must attract more staff. With our veteran employees, we are dealing with wage compression that makes it difficult for staff who have made this job their careers and have dedicated their lives to this work. Today, our union is asking you to support competitive wages for our staff. Additionally, we ask this committee to support an amendment that would limit the CADE funding formula cap of 3% to fiscal year 27, rather than the current proposal of a 3% cap for fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 29. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dorsey, and thanks for your tenure and your service to CCBC. Next, please.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Wolick, and members of the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee. My name is Sharita Bryant, and I'm the lead organizer for AFT Maryland. AFT Maryland is the state federation that represents full-time faculty at 8 of the state's community colleges: Chesapeake and Montgomery College, Community College of Baltimore County, Frederick, Hagerstown, Howard, Baltimore City, and Prince George's Community College. On behalf of our members at these institutions, we call for this committee to fully fund the important work of our state's community college and amend the budget proposal by ensuring that no college receive any reduction in funding and reject the requested cap to CADE funding of 3% for each of the next 3 years. I believe you have our written testimony, so allow me to highlight a few things. Capping the amount of additional funding a college can receive through CADE will create serious challenges for our educators this year. If the committee extends this cap for 3 years, those challenges could become nearly impossible to overcome. Our community college educators play a vital role in the success of Maryland's future. They are essential to the blueprint for education, serving as opportunity spaces for dual enrollment students and as the starting point for training and licensing high-quality, effective teachers who will go on to serve our students across the state. Our community colleges are places where Marylanders can start apprenticeships, learn a trade, or begin a profession that leads to stable, well-paying careers that strengthens Maryland's economy now and for years to come. Additionally, our state's community colleges are places for students to begin their journey towards a degree. Without them, a higher education for thousands of Marylanders, if not more, would be completely inaccessible because of the financial restraints. Capping funding for community colleges caps Maryland's future. Cutting support forces educators to do more than less and limits how many students can be served. With full funding, we can deliver on the promise of preparing Maryland's workforce. We again call on this committee to restore full funding for our state's community colleges. Thank you.
Hello. I know Chair Smith stepped out. Vice Chair Wolick and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Christine DeBovie. I am a biology professor at CCBC. I was dismayed to learn that Maryland is considering a cap to the amount of state aid that its community colleges receive. I want this committee to see what I see, that community college students deserve the best and restricting state funds would be a giant step backwards. My father was an alumnus of the college where I now teach, what was then Essex Community College and is now CCBC. As a kid, I watched him earn his degree and work towards a better life. My dad was, at the time, a recent immigrant from Poland, and in many ways, he was a lot like the students I see in my classes today. He was returning to school in his 20s, and he was balancing a rigorous science course load with demands outside of the classroom, his work and his family. He went on to work for a major biotech company designing cutting-edge diagnostic tests. And his journey is part of why I believe in the possibilities of a community college education. But I have seen some of the most talented science educators I know, some of whom are community college alums themselves, reject teaching at community colleges because the salaries are too low and the demands placed on faculty are too high. If the state caps community college funding, educators will have to do more, even more, with less support and fewer resources. We have an aging society and we need new nurses, radiographers, physical therapists. Students come back to me and they say that the support I poured into them as they were completing their biology courses gave them the confidence to persist in their health professions programs. If my class sizes increase or new responsibilities are added to my job description, I won't be able to provide the same level of support. Community college students, like my father, are balancing a lot. They deserve faculty and institutions that will help them recover from a bad exam grade and build good study strategies, that will help them build genuine connections on campus with faculty and other students to support their persistence, and that will even address the basics, making sure they have enough food to eat and that other basic needs are met so that they can devote the energy that they can spare to their education. Community college students deserve institutions that are going to see and support them. Let us not cap our students' futures by instituting a cap and pulling back these supports, these essential supports that promote persistence, just as more students are walking in our doors. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing your perspective.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And our analyst, Natali Andrade. Did I say it right?
Really bad. There you go. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the Fiscal 27 allowance for the Maryland State Department of Education's Division of Early Childhood. On page 1 of the analysis, the Fiscal 27 allowance increases by $69.1 million, or 7.7%, to $966.1 million. On page 5 begins a discussion of performance measures. The first measure is capacity of childcare providers. Exhibit 1 shows that total licensed childcare capacity has remained relatively stable in the most recent fiscal years. Capacity increased to 207,539 slots in fiscal 24 and remained essentially flat in fiscal 25. On page 6, Exhibit 2 helps explain this stability by showing offsetting trends across provider types. While overall capacity appears stable, there has been a long-term decline in small family childcare home capacity, which decreased by 37.8% between July 2016 and July 2025. At the same time, capacity among large family childcare homes increased by 74.1%, and licensed childcare center capacity increased just by 2.3%. On page 7, there is a second measure related to the redesigned kindergarten readiness assessment that was implemented in the 2025 and 2026 school year. Exhibit 3 shows that statewide 57% of all students were classified as established in early literacy, meaning they met kindergarten readiness expectations in early literacy. 13.2% as developing, indicating partial mastery of foundational skills, and 29.7% as beginning, reflecting limited demonstration of readiness skills at the time of the assessment. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows that statewide 55.3% of all students were classified as established in mathematics. Regarding these results, MSDE should explain how the redesigned KRA addresses and mitigates the explicit bias previously identified for students from various racial, ethnic, and linguistic backgrounds, including any changes to assessment design, validation methods, or administration procedures. On page 10, the fiscal 27 allowance includes 3 proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations totaling $64.5 million. These include $48.9 million for the Child Care Scholarship Program to provide additional federal funds, $14.9 million in Blueprint special funds for private pre-kindergarten programs, and $646,000 for shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings. On page 11, Exhibit 6 shows the distribution of the $966.1 million in planning spending in the fiscal 27 allowance. $544 million, or 56.3%, is allocated to the Child Care Scholarship Program. $284 million, or 29.4%, to publicly funded pre-kindergarten. $51 million, or 5.3%, to Judy and Party Centers, and $42 million, or 4.4%, to the Division of Early Childhood. Exhibit 7 on pages 12 and 13 shows that the $69.1 million increase is primarily driven by a $69.9 million increase in pre-kindergarten formula funding and a $5.9 million increase for Judy Center expansion, and a $2.2 million increase for the therapeutic childcare program. These increases are partially offset by a $5.7 million decrease due to an end of a funding mandate for the childcare credential program, and a $5.8 million decrease in federal funds within the Division of Early Childhood. On page 14 begins issue number 1, related to the ongoing childcare scholarship program enrollment freeze. The Childcare Scholarship Program provided financial assistance to 43,722 eligible children and over 29,493 families per month on average in fiscal 2025. Exhibit 8 on page 15 shows the monthly count of children enrolled in the Childcare Scholarship Program from January 2019 through November 2025. Enrollment increased steadily beginning in January 2022 and exceeded the pre-pandemic peak of 20,907 children recorded in October 2019. Enrollment reached a record high of 47,811 children in June 2025, following the announcement of the enrollment freeze effective May 1st, 2025. Exhibit 9 on pages 16 and 17 shows children on the Childcare Scholarship waitlist by county and age group as of October 28, 2025. There were 3,745 children from 2,700 families on the waitlist. The largest numbers of children on the waitlist were in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. The agency has reported that the enrollment freeze will remain in place until monthly enrollment reaches approximately 40,000 children, which MSDE identified as the level needed to maintain fiscal stability. So the agency should discuss the estimated time frame for the Childcare Scholarship Program enrollment to reach 40,000 children and the prioritization method that it will use for taking children off the waitlist to replace these enrollments. Exhibit 10 on page 18 shows childcare scholarship expenditures by fund source from fiscal 2022 through fiscal 2027 allowance. Total spending increased from $162.2 million in fiscal 2022 to $543.7 million in the fiscal 2027 allowance. Federal funds cover a substantial share of costs in fiscal 2022 and fiscal 2023, including a supplemental COVID-19 CCDF funds. Beginning in fiscal 24 and continuing through fiscal 27, general funds cover on average approximately 78% of total program expenses. The fiscal 27 allowance also includes a proposed federal fund deficiency of $48.8 million to utilize all available federal funds to cover the unexpected enrollment growth leading to the enrollment freeze. Beginning on page 19, the analysis discusses updated provider reimbursement rates under the Childcare Scholarship Program. MSDE estimates the cost impact at approximately $2.75 million per month, or $33 million on an annualized basis. The fiscal 27 allowance does not fully incorporate the updated reimbursement rates, which indicates that the Childcare Scholarship Program may be underfunded by approximately $33 million. MSDE should comment on the exclusion of updated provider reimbursement rate costs from the fiscal 27 allowance and how it will address the potential $33 million shortfall. Issue number 2 begins on page 20 and provides an overview of early childhood programs under the Blueprint for Maryland Future. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $362.4 million in total funds for Blueprint mandates supporting early childhood programs. The Maryland Child Care Credential Program does not receive funds as funding for the program is not mandated in fiscal 2027. So MSDE should comment on how the absence of funding will affect the implementation of the Maryland Child Care Credential Program, including whether new credential applications will be processed and whether existing participants will continue to receive credential payments. Exhibit 11 on page 22 shows early childhood funding under the Blueprint for fiscal 26 and fiscal 27. The Maryland State Pre-Kindergarten Grant Program increases by $84.8 million. Wraparound and supported services increased by $9.1 million, while workforce and program quality development funding decreases by $5.9 million. Exhibit 12 on page 23 presents pre-kindergarten state funding and enrollment from fiscal 2019 through fiscal 2027. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $257 million for the pre-kindergarten formula and supports 26,240 children, including 24,383 Tier 1 students and 1,857 Tier 2 students. Exhibit 13 on page 25 shows the Tier 2 pre-kindergarten sliding scale revision for fiscal 27. MSDE and the State Board of Education revised the Tier 2 full-day pre-kindergarten sliding scale beginning with fiscal 2027. Compared to prior Tier 2 assumptions, the revised scale lowers the effective family share relative to the higher per pupil amount and increases the combined state and local share per Tier 2 student. The largest increases occur in the higher income bands, where the previous scale required families to cover a substantially greater portion of total cost. As a result, the fiscal impact of the Tier 2 program is higher on a per-student basis under the revised scale, even before accounting for changes in enrollment levels. So MSDE should provide an explanation for revising the Tier 2 sliding scale and quantify the resulting change in total state and local costs compared to the prior structure. While expanding access to early education is a priority, these changes pose significant budgetary pressures. The combination of eligibility growth and rising per pupil cost could require substantial new state funding at a time when fiscal constraints are an ongoing concern. So DLS recommends modifications to the statutory requirements. First, to maintain the current 360% of the federal poverty guidelines eligibility cap through fiscal 27 instead of expanded to the 600% of the federal poverty guidelines in fiscal 27. And second, to reduce the scheduled per pupil funding increase in fiscal 27 by setting the amount at $17,211 per student instead of $19,950. Issue number 3 begins on page 26 and relates to the expansion of the pre-kindergarten mixed delivery system. Exhibit 14 on page 27 shows the percentage of publicly funded pre-kindergarten slots served by eligible private providers by county in the 24-25 and 25-26 school years. In 24-25, when the requirement was 10%, only 4 counties met or exceeded the threshold. In 25-26 school year, when the requirement increased to 20%, only Montgomery County met the statutory threshold. Most local education agencies require waivers in both school years. So MSDE should discuss the efforts currently underway to expand eligible private provider capacity and indicate whether it anticipates improved compliance among LEAs. Issue number 4 begins on page 28 and relates to the CCAT modernization project. The project received approximately $44.1 million in federal funding through fiscal 2026. In November 2025, MSDE paused the project. The legacy CCAT system continues to operate with annual maintenance costs averaging slightly over $7 million. So the agency should clarify whether ongoing operational and maintenance funding for the existing CCAT system is included in the fiscal 2027 allowance and identify the amount and fund source supporting continued system operations. On page 29 begins the operating recommended actions. The first recommended action is to add language reducing the special fund appropriation for the pre-kindergarten funding formula by $52.6 million, contingent on legislation limiting the Tier 2 expansion and adjusting the per pupil funding growth. The second recommended action is to adopt committee narrative requesting quarterly reports on the Child Care Scholarship Program expenditures, enrollment, and the status of the waiting list. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Andrade, for that comprehensive analysis. Are there any questions for the analyst? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agency. Dr. Wright and your team. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's kind. Glad to be here. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about fiscal year 2027, the Division of Early Childhood Budget. With me today at the table are Sarah Neville Morgan, who's the Assistant Superintendent for the Division of Early Childhood, Donna Gunning, who's our Chief Financial Officer, and Krishna Tulur, who is our Chief Operating Officer. And I'd like to start by thanking Mrs. Natalie Andrade for her very thorough analysis of our budget, so thank you. When I reflect on where Maryland was just a few years ago and where we are today, I see a system that is fundamentally stronger, more accessible, and more accountable than at any point in our history. That progress did not happen by accident. It happened because Maryland made a deliberate choice through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and through your partnership to treat early childhood not as an add-on, but as the foundation of our educational system. Today, Maryland is investing nearly $1 billion in early childhood education. That is a historic commitment to our youngest learners and to the families who depend on a strong early learning system. Since 2022, we have expanded access at an unprecedented scale. The Child Care Scholarship Program has more than doubled in enrollment in just 3 years, reaching nearly 48,000 children at its peak. Publicly funded pre-K now serves more than 33,000 children statewide through a mixed delivery model that includes both public schools and community-based providers. We have nearly doubled our Judy and Patty centers from 62 to 119, strengthening two-generation supports that help stabilize families and improve outcomes for children. This is meaningful system growth. But growth alone is not success. What distinguishes Maryland's work is that we have expanded access while strengthening quality and accountability. We raised reimbursement rates for providers. We reduced family co-payments, which are now among the lowest in the country. And we have tied funding to quality improvement through Maryland Excels. At the same time, rapid growth brings fiscal realities. State investment in child care assistance increased dramatically over the last 3 years. When enrollment surged beyond projections, we made a difficult decision to implement a partial enrollment freeze to preserve long-term sustainability. This was not a decision about whether families need support. It was a decision to protect the integrity and stability of the program. We are committed to working with you to ensure that sustainability exists while maintaining access and quality. We're also building a mixed delivery pre-K system that gives families meaningful choice. This work is complex. It requires partnership with private providers, technical assistance, and policy refinement. We have made progress, but participation varies across counties, and we acknowledge that we have more to do to meet the statutory targets. We are strengthening engagement, simplifying grant processes, and providing provider capacity to ensure, and building provider capacity to ensure that this system works equitably across Maryland. We are proud of our success, but we are also candid about the challenges. Demand continues to outpace funding for child care assistance. Demographic shifts are affecting enrollment patterns. Private provider participation requires continued support. But here is what is also true. More children are served today than at any other time in our state's history. Quality standards are stronger and more transparent. Early childhood is embedded in Maryland's long-term education reform strategy. Our strategic plan, Maryland Momentum, holds us accountable to one clear goal. Every child in Maryland has access to a high-quality early childhood program. To guide our decisions, we ask two questions. Is this good for Maryland's children? And are Maryland's children better off because of this investment? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are our accountability standard. Before I close, I would like to address the analysis regarding the kindergarten readiness assessment. In July 2024, following an expedited procurement process, MSTE executed a contract with Renaissance Learning to implement a redesigned KRA beginning in the 25-26 school year. The redesigned KRA mitigates previously identified concerns through the following. You look at assessment design and institute bias controls. There is a validation and psychometric review. We're using universal design and accessibility for all students. It is available in different languages.
improving administration and reporting. And one thing that we have in place that we did not have in place when the KRA was first administered was what I'm calling a technical advisory committee, and I think I spoke about this the other day. This is a group of psychometricians that are nationally known that are supposed to be in place in all states to oversee the development and implementation of assessment systems. Maryland has not had a TAC in place in the past decade. And so we now have this group of people that are overseeing, making sure that our assessments are reliable and valid and meet all the requirements that we need, including to be non-biased. In closing, I want to say that Maryland's early childhood system is not static. It is evolving, it is modernizing, and it is adjusting to the fiscal realities while staying focused on children. Even in a challenging fiscal environment, we are keeping Maryland momentum moving forward because early childhood education is the foundation to everything that follows. With that, I will turn it over to Chief Operating Krishna Tallur to walk through the specific responses of the analysis and the recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Krishna Tallur, Chief Operating Officer at MSDE. I will share a summary of MSDE's response to the analysis.
May you move your mic a little closer to your mouth so we can hear you better?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regarding the CCS freeze and program funding, as of January 2026, CCS program has a monthly enrollment of 40,840 children, and a total wait list is now at 5,113 children. MSDE estimates meeting this enrollment target in spring of 2026. The department is working closely with DBM and Governor's Office to finalize an approach for prioritizing children on the wait list for new scholarships. Per COMAR 13A 140608, the department will prioritize children experiencing homelessness for scholarships first, as well as children from families transitioning from the temporary cash assistance program. MSDE's fiscal 2027 estimates did include the cost for the provider market rate increase, estimated at $33 million. However, MSDE does estimate a small deficiency in the program in fiscal 2027. MSDE continues to work with DBM on the appropriate funding level for the program. Regarding credentialing next, MSDE would like to note that the uncertainty of funding for this program makes the implementation of the requirements difficult. If there is no funding in 2027, the existing participants, as well as any additional childcare employees, will not be able to be paid the funds that are due to them. In addition, stopping and restarting the program will also have an impact on service contracts MSDE utilizes to administer the program. MSDE is currently working with DBM on the options for including the mandated funding for Maryland Excel's Quality Improvement Bonus Program in the fiscal F27 budget. Next, regarding the pre-K sliding scale, the original sliding scale capped the family share at 85% of the annual per pupil amount for families at the highest eligibility level in Tier 2. The revised sliding scale currently in use caps the family share at 65% of the annual per pupil amount for families at the highest eligibility level in Tier 2. For fiscal 2027, using the current sliding scale, costs increased by $3 million. As more families in Tier 2 participate in the program, the impact of the current sliding scale on state and local cost shares will increase. MSDE is working internally to revise the sliding scale to phase in family share in a more even manner while still holding the cost at 7% of families' annual income for lower income families. MSDE initiated a human-centered design review of the pre-kindergarten expansion grant process, including multiple sessions with advocates and interest holders, including the newly implemented pre-kindergarten system analysis workgroup. The department revised the pre-K expansion grant application process. Changes included earlier release of the application, simplified language, less complex questions, more single response items with checklists and prompts to guide the applicants. Regarding the CCAT system, In 2018, MSDE embarked upon a comprehensive system upgrade to consolidate CCATs and other small systems in the division onto a single modern platform. Due to the pandemic and subsequent pre-bid protests, MSDE scaled down the scope of the upgrade to a limited upgrade of the system. The work began in October of 2023 and was scheduled to be completed in January 26. In November 25, MSDE paused the project due to the discovery of system testing issues to review scope, structure, and processes included in the system, incorporate the impact of the anticipated federal regulatory changes and the long-term sustainability of the system. MSDE is expected to make the decision on the future of the upgrade of the system in spring of 2026. Maintenance and operations costs for CCAT systems is currently included in the FY27 budget. MSDE concurs with the recommended budget action to continue providing regular reports to the CCS program. However, MSDE respectfully requests a modification to the department's requirements for this program. Currently, department provides monthly reports as required in 9.5112 of the education article. The department also provides quarterly reports defined in the DLS analysis, JCR reports. MSDE proposes eliminating the monthly reports in the month the quarterly reports are also submitted, that is the 15th of the month in September, December, March, and June. Regarding the BORF recommendations, MSDE concurs with the governor's allowance. With that, MSDE team is ready to answer the questions. We have submitted our written response to the analysis, and we stand ready for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Delegate Grice.
Thank you. So a couple years ago, we passed some legislation that included our federal Head Start programs and their participation in the Ulysses Curry grant. And the reason why we did that is because in most cases, they have the capacity to expand, but they're limited to 300% of poverty, and I think we go to 600. And so the intent of the bill was that they were going to be able to participate and get their per pupil spending. So I guess as a follow-up a couple years later, in the real world, how is that being implemented now? How are they accessing that money, or are these students, I mean, are these Head Start programs getting that per pupil funding?
So it's, we're actually using both the Ulysses S. Curry as well as having Head Start programs in Maryland participate in Maryland's public pre-K program. So the Ulysses S. Curry has been used most for either expanding the day. So if they were only providing a part-day Head Start program, they're allowed to then provide a full day, or providing Head Start into the summer. So expanding services those ways, both for infant toddler through early Head Start as well as Head Start. And then we have a significant number of Head Start programs who are also have applied to be part of Maryland's public pre-K program, and are through that either expanding the day or expanding seats in their Head Start program.
They do, yeah. They do receive the same per pupil amount.
Could you get closer to the mic, please?
Sorry. They do receive the same per pupil amount. Yes.
In our Head Start.
It's done through which program? I mean, how do they calculate, or how do they know it on their end that they're getting the same per pupil funding that the public schools?
How do they know?
Yeah, I mean.
So those that are applying to the pre-K expansion grant program to receive funding to begin participating in the publicly funded pre-K, that's all part of that grant process. And there have been a number of information sessions and out to the community. So they would find out that way.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, I just want to say thank you for your presentation, and we know this is, a challenge that we're going to have to rise to in this session regarding childcare scholarships. I definitely want to lift up that I know there was some surprise that so many people signed up right before the freeze was initiated, but I think sometimes things that require modeling, to me, it's a little bit of common sense. When people feel a door's closing, they try to run through the door before it. So I just want to make sure that as we're making decisions, we're not as caught off guard by what I think is just human nature. When people realize something they so desperately rely upon is about to become impossible to access or delayed, I'm not surprised by the reaction. If not for the act of this legislature changing the presumption of eligibility, this could still be an undersubscribed resource. So the fact that we were able to tweak that, when something from the government is really working for people, it doesn't actually need good marketing. The word of mouth is what is getting people connected to the resource. So I do want to lift up, because people aren't always shouting out good government as much as I would like, but it's a recognition that when you're providing people with resources they truly need in a way that's easy for them to access it, they will let Lottie Dottie and everybody know about it, and that's a good thing. Because that means that's young people in care, being prepared for pre-K by having some of those earliest moments, and also their guardians and parents being in a better position to be active members of our workforce. And so I just want to say thank you to the child care workers, because they are the workforce behind the workforce. I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, so these days were not that far away from me. I still remember them, and grateful to those who helped me become a better parent. And so we just have to not only create more of them, the credentialing tool, training program, but we also need to ensure that they're paid promptly. These are all the things in the ecosystem that we want to be a partner with MSDE around, and we value your responses here, and we'll be working close together during this session to solve some of these problems. So I just want to say thank you for that. Delegate Tolles.
I just wanted to kind of state for the record, the biases report, I know you talked about it, you indicated in your response. It was highlighted with our analysts, and this is going back to what we talked about yesterday, and these biases just with mathematics, but biases in kindergartners and multilingual learners, students with disabilities and diverse backgrounds. It is such a problem for me, because if we are starting our kids off with mishaps from our system, then it definitely make it more difficult for them as they go further in our educational system, which is why you continue to have those biases even in certain subject matters like mathematics that we discussed yesterday. So I just want to say I'm looking forward to the report. That's something I really highlighted in this report, those biases, because I think we need to ensure that we give our students in this state all the tools necessary. And folks come from different backgrounds, whether you're underrepresented, whether you are a multilingual learner, a student with disabilities. We need to prepare our students on day one, and that obviously starts in kindergarten. So I'm just at all. Of course, I'm new, so maybe this was, this probably has been going on for a while. But to that point, we need to be able to get a handle on it quickly. So I'm happy to see that we now have that report taking place, but we certainly need to get a handle on it as much as we can without the full detail of the report, but begin to look at small changes that we need to make.
Well, we share your concern, and that's the reason that on our technical advisory committee, there is a psychometrician that has expertise in multilingual learners. There's one that has expertise in dealing with students with disabilities. So that lends a lot of credence as we are developing our assessments and looking at our assessments to ensure that those biases do not exist.
Thank you. I just, I appreciate that, but we are losing students as we speak. So I just wanted to ensure that we don't wait on a report to begin to.
Oh, no, that's ongoing work. That's work we do each and every day.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Tolles. I don't think, do you have any questions for this panel? Okay, so we do have some remaining witnesses on this particular topic, so thank you so much for your testimony today, Madam Superintendent and panel. Calling up next, Laura Wheeldryer, Ann Geddes, Pia Morrison, and let me see. Yeah, I believe that's everyone not affiliated with the department.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Thank you all for your leadership on early childhood and your continued commitment to Maryland's youngest children. I'm Laura Wheeldryer, Executive Director at Maryland Family Network. I want to make 3 points in my time before you. First, the enrollment cap on child care scholarship is presenting enormous challenges for families I've spoken to across the state. I've heard, for example, from parents who moved here from other states where they had scholarship and who cannot access it here and are having grave difficulties finding affordable child care. A mom who welcomed a new baby and had to check herself out of the hospital early to go home and care for her other children, and parents who are struggling to meet all of the financial obligations required to support their children. We are putting them in the position of making impossible choices. We hope to see an end to the wait list. The current child care enrollment cap of around 40,000 children is arbitrary and was set to fit in the current budget allocation. We look forward to working with you and your colleagues and with the administration to raise the enrollment cap so more families can access child care. Second point, we should refrain from walking back on our commitment to public pre-K. We cannot meet the state's blueprint goals if we restrict eligibility, reduce the per pupil rate, or fail to increase the pre-K expansion grant fund. So let me unpack that just a little bit. The state's pre-K expansion grant, which has been flat funded at $26.6 million for 6 years, is the only avenue for high quality child care providers to enter the pre-K delivery system. They're ready. They're so ready. We hope the funds will be there so more pre-K can be provided in communities across the state. And we need mixed delivery to work for the child care field to remain viable. Second, we need to do more for the populations of students who, according to the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, are arriving at school without the critical foundation necessary for success in school. This is the point Delegate Tolles was just making. Guaranteeing public pre-K seats for children with disabilities and multilingual learners would go a long way to help. Third, a slowdown in the increase of the public pre-K per pupil funding as proposed in the analysis would exacerbate existing challenges with pre-K expansion. Please don't delay the increase in the per pupil funding or restrict eligibility. And finally, I know this committee already recognizes the importance of a well-trained and adequately compensated child care workforce. The Maryland Child Care Credential Program provides financial support and access to professional development. Both are crucial. We appreciate your efforts to ensure the credential is funded. As appropriators, I know you'll love to hear spending in the early years is an investment. These commitments to families and young children pay off in the long run.
Please summarize. You're out of time.
Yep. I thank this committee for your leadership. I'm going to quote Chair Smith and say, this is good government. Thank you so much.
I love to be an inspiration whenever I can. Next witness.
Geddes. Hi, thank you, Madam Chair and subcommittee members. I'm Ann Geddes. I'm with the Mental Health Association of Maryland, and I also chair the Children's Behavioral Health Coalition. Here, obviously, in support of full funding for the Division of Early Childhood at MSDE. We're also asking for an amendment to strengthen the division's Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services Program. It's a mouthful. In recent years, our coalition, the Children's Behavioral Health Coalition, has been concerned about the status of the support, I'm just going to abbreviate it, the support services program. The state has invested $3 million annually in the program, which is I know a very small part of the budget, but it's an important part. It provides support to child care providers, both family providers and those in child care centers, to help nurture the social emotional development of very young children, manage challenging behaviors, reduce child-teacher conflict, and avoid suspensions and expulsions, which can be very high. Since 2009, MSDE contracted with the University of Maryland School of Social Work to provide training, technical assistance, and data collection. I'm sorry, I lost my place. They ensured that programs were implemented consistently across the state with a focus on equity and quality improvement. The data showed that the program had wide reach, focused on equity, and was being implemented consistently across the state and achieved positive results. In FY25, MSDE did not renew the contract with the University of Maryland School of Social Work. We're concerned that the discontinuation of that contract has resulted in a loss of important data that could be used to ensure quality and consistency of the programs across the state, ensure equity, and demonstrate that the positive impact of the state's investment. We ask that budget language include a requirement that MSDE report to the legislature the data points on the infant and early childhood mental health support services program that had previously been collected. Thank you for your attention, and I appreciate all the work you do for Maryland's youngest children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and last but certainly not least. Okay.
Honorable Chairwoman Smith and members of the Education Economic Development Subcommittee, we at SEIU Local 500 represent over 23,000 workers, including family child care providers in Maryland. Our members see firsthand the impacts on the families and the current state of Maryland's child care investment. I'm here to urge you to fully fund early childhood development in the FY 2027 budget, end the child care scholarship enrollment freeze, and invest in the workforce. While we appreciate Governor Westmore's proposed FY 2027 budget and the continued $414 million investment in the Child Care Scholarship Program, that commitment reflects an understanding that child care is an essential infrastructure for working families, but maintaining the funding levels is not enough. Since 2023, enrollment in the scholarship program has surged, reaching nearly 48,000 children at its peak, and that growth shows how critical this program is. Today, eligible families are sitting on wait lists, unable to access care they qualify for. Parents cannot work without child care, and children cannot benefit from early learning. We must end the freeze in FY 2027 by providing the additional general fund support to ensure every eligible child can receive a scholarship. At the same time, early childhood educators are among the lowest paid educational professionals. We must increase reimbursement rates, fund credentialing and career pathways, and create wage parity with the rest of public education. We at SEIU Local 500 urge you to end the enrollment freeze, invest in our early childhood educators, and support Maryland's children and working families. Thank you so much for your consideration and your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for our witnesses? Delegate Tolles.
Coming to discuss the mental health of our young people, our children, particularly that, that kindergarten through, I guess, second or third grade as they begin to develop. I think that it's so much going on with Roblox and cell phones and tablets and all of that, that is so critical to ensure that we pay attention to the mental health of our children at such a young age. And, the stories I hear about, young children harming themselves and things of that nature based off, internet or just whatever, it's just important to pay attention to that. Even in our educational system, that should be something that we, look into, whether it's, relaxation techniques, yoga techniques, whatever it takes to ensure that our children are getting attention to that at such a mental health at such an early age, not when something happened, but focusing on that holistically. So I want to thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. I believe that's all public testimony on this particular budget. Is there anyone that I missed? Seeing none, thank you all for your time and your testimony and your hard work on behalf of our littles. We're going to move on to our next budget hearing with, hold on, let me see. Let's move to St. Mary's College of Maryland. And we'll begin with Budget Analyst Micah Richards.
you're ready. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Richards, and I want to thank the chair and the committee and the citizens of the great state of Maryland for allowing me to speak before you today. I am presenting the St. Mary's College Fiscal 27 Analysis Report, and I want to thank St. Mary's College for their service and collaboration with this analysis. Starting on page 1. The fiscal 27 allowance increases by $2 million to $92.9 million compared to fiscal 26 working appropriation. On page 4, Exhibit 1, the total undergraduate enrollment decreased by 0.5% in FAR 25 compared to FAR 24. On page 5, Exhibit 2, the undergraduate applications submitted increased by 3.1%, and the accepted number of students increased by 9.1%. However, the enrolled number of students only increased by 1 student in FAR 25 compared to FAR 24. Therefore, DLS requests for St. Mary's College to comment on how they are working to increase the share of accepted students who enroll. On page 6, Exhibit 3, out-of-state enrollment in FAR 25 decreased by 6.4% compared to FAR 24. St. Mary's College notes they have reached a balance between in-state and out-of-state admissions. On page 6 and 7, Exhibit 4, the second-year retention rate for the 2023 cohort increased by 4.3 percentage points, and the third-year retention rate increased by 4.2 percentage points compared to the 2022 cohort. On page 7 and 8, Exhibit 5, the 4-year graduation rate of the 2020 cohort increased by 5.3 percentage points compared to the 2019 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate increased by 1.1 percentage points for the 2018 cohort compared to the 2017 cohort. DLS requests for St. Mary's College to discuss how they are working to improve graduation rates. On page 8 and 9, Exhibit 6, non-Pell full-time transfer students had the highest graduation rate at 76%. On page 9 and 10, Exhibit 7, the estimated cost of attendance for a full-time first-time student in FAR 24 was 2.3% higher than FAR 23. On page 10 and 11, Exhibit 8, 61.7% of institutional aid was allocated to merit scholarships. On page 11 and 12, Exhibit 9, a bachelor's in computer and information sciences had the lowest federal debt and the largest median earning after graduation. On page 12 and 13, Exhibit 10, the education and general expenditures decreased by 6.7% in fiscal 26 compared to fiscal 25. On page 14, Exhibit 11, the total state support in the fiscal 27 allowance increases by $3.3 million to $46.2 million compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. On page 15 and 16, Exhibit 12, St. Mary's College funding formula has protected the institution, and in fiscal 27, total revenues increased by 1.7% compared to fiscal 26. On page 18, Exhibit 13, total enrollment increased by 2.6% in fiscal 25 compared to fiscal 24. This is the highest level compared to previous years. On page 19, Exhibit 14, education and general expenditures are projected to exceed revenues by $1.7 million in fiscal 27 compared to fiscal 26. Therefore, DLS requests for St. Mary's College to discuss their efforts to better align the education general expenditures with revenues to reduce reliance on auxiliary revenue to resolve shortfalls. On page 20, Exhibit 15, state funding per full-time equivalent students decreased by $772 in fiscal 25 compared to fiscal 24. On page 21, Exhibit 16, from fiscal 18 to 26, total tuition and fees averaged $15,149 for an in-state undergraduate student. On page 22, Issue 2 discusses St. Mary's College actions to address the Office of Legislative Audit's findings and initiatives implemented to improve their financial management practices per the request from the 2025 Joint Chairman's Report. The $500,000 in withheld general funds was authorized to be released. On page 23, DLS recommends for St. Mary's College to concur with governor's allowance. On page 24 and 25, on June 20th, 2024, Moody's ratings changed St. Mary's College outlook from stable to negative. Moody's ratings noted that St. Mary's College credit rating will be updated later in calendar 2026. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much for that analysis. Are there any questions for our analyst? Seeing none, we welcome, it's so funny, you've been before the MGA in so many iterations, but I believe this is your very first budget hearing as president.
Yes, that's correct.
So congratulations.
Thank you. We're working our way through all the different readings. Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Wallach and members of the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee. I'm Rhonda Phillips. I'm president of St. Mary's College. It's a pleasure to be with you here today and discuss our operating budget requests. With me today are Eileen Petula, our Vice President for Business and Finance, Aaron Tamarcio, who serves on our Board of Trustees, and Brandon Engel, our Director of Government Affairs. We also have a number of students who are in the audience today who have come to Annapolis to tour the State House, meet with elected officials and alumni, and see how state government really works. This is experiential education in the work. So if you would stand for a moment, please. Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like once again to express our appreciation for your continued support of higher education in the state of Maryland, and especially for your support of St. Mary's College. I also want to thank our analysts for the excellent work they do. As always, higher education is a complicated space, and we appreciate your work to understand us, especially in these challenging times. We're grateful for the governor's proposed FY27 allowance, as well as the recommendations from DLS to concur with that proposal. Let me first start with enrollment. I want to start with a brief discussion, which has continued its upward trend for the past few years in enrollment for the college. As noted in Exhibit 1, overall enrollment has increased by approximately 9% from fall 21 to fall 25. We attribute this growth to our ability to recruit strong incoming classes of first-year and transfer students, as well as our strong retention rates compared to our public and private peers. Additionally, the college has engaged in a variety of initiatives to strengthen its position in the higher education landscape and attract new students, including implementation of the LEAD core curriculum, development of new majors, and the launch of nationwide marketing efforts to expand our application pool. As shown in Exhibit 2, entering classes have increased by about 5% over the past 5 years, demonstrating continued positive enrollment momentum despite the significant disruption experienced in the past several admission cycles. Together, these initiatives have made it more relevant and more competitive. As shown in Exhibit 3, applications to the college have increased by 14% over the past 5 years and have more than doubled since our baseline year of 2019, from 1,621 to over 3,400. Moving on to affordability, I would be remiss not to emphasize that achieving the college's mission remains challenging. Balancing the demands of an excellent honors-level curriculum with the promise of public access is complicated enough in the best of circumstances. However, we continue to implement institutional efforts to identify efficiencies and control expenses. Combined with your support, we have been successful in helping St. Mary's College keeping it affordable for Maryland students. As shown in Exhibit 4, tuition was frozen for 6 consecutive years without additional tuition relief funding from the state, and today just barely exceeds the levels from 12 years ago. Turning now fully to the questions posed by DLS, I was asked to comment on efforts to increase the share of accepted students who enroll. First, I think it is important to keep in mind that the decline in yield rates is reflective of a nationwide trend. It is not specific to St. Mary's. However, in response to this decline, we have employed a comprehensive yield strategy to build strategic partnerships, improve financial incentives, and target personalized outreach. For example, we have recently engaged with private partners to establish and maintain an always-on digital presence, ensuring that engagement with prospective students and their families is consistent, not just centered around deadlines and events. We've also worked to further refine our merit scholarships and financial aid structure, prioritizing financial assistance offers to students who are best prepared to contribute to and benefit from our unique community and honors level curriculum. Finally, we have expanded our yield event offerings to maximize the potential for accepted students to develop a personal connection with our college and subsequently increase their likelihood of matriculation. Next, I was asked to comment on efforts to improve our graduation rates. I want to emphasize that, as the state's designated public honors college, we proudly maintain some of the highest retention and completion rates among our peers. However, we remain aware that our statutory mission requires constant innovation and improvement. To that point, one of our most impactful initiatives has been the development and implementation of remote winterim courses between the traditional fall and spring semesters. Since their inclusion in our permanent course offerings, these courses have steadily reduced the number of students who are considered off track for timely completion of their degrees. Additionally, beginning with the fall 2024 cohort, each student at SMCM is assigned 4 designated on-campus advisors prior to their first year or transfer orientation as part of the Seahawk Success Network. These advisors include faculty, co-curricular, financial aid counselors, as well as academic support services, which are able to identify and address challenges before they become obstacles. Finally, our flagship campus programs, including the D'Souza Brandt Scholars Program, Lander Scholar Program, and Sum Primus, have strengthened our ability to provide targeted and enhanced academic, co-curricular, and professional development opportunities to first-generation and Pell-eligible students, which both make up almost 30% of our entering class of 2025. Closing with more technical matters, DLS asked me to comment on efforts to align E&G expenditures with E&G revenues. In our assessment, the divergence between these two figures is methodological, not structural. The current E&G framework captures a broad range of expenditures associated with instruction, financial aid, and institutional support, but it does not reflect several significant revenue streams which support these activities. For example, the college's full scholarship and financial aid budget is recorded as an E&G expenditure in the current framework. However, a substantial portion of that budget is funded through a combination of private philanthropy, endowed scholarships, and annual gifts. Since those revenues are considered restrictive, they are not counted as part of our E&G revenues, which leads to the appearance of a gap, even though our commitments are responsibly and sustainably funded. A similar methodological discrepancy exists in our instruction and academic or institutional support line items, which have benefited from a number of competitive contract and grants awards, as well as the strategic use of bond proceeds to expand academic programming in high-demand fields. In summary, when all of the supporting revenue sources are accounted for, there are no structural deficits in the college's budget. I know the committee has a lot of ground left to cover, so I'll conclude my initial comments here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you.
Thank you, President Phillips. Are there any questions today for the panel? Seeing none. Oh yes, Vice Chair Wolek.
Okay. Just have a quick question. Thank you so much for your presentation and welcome. I was just looking at the graduation rate from 2012, and you touched upon it in your remarks. I was just curious from your perspective what the difference is between then, in terms of graduation, and it's much higher than now. What's going on? I mean, because it's been a
There's a couple of things that have happened, and especially in that intervening time. One is that often if a student leaves us, it's because of financial issues, and it may be beyond our ability to handle those. It may be a job loss by a family member or parent, and that just negates the ability of them to continue because of financial situations. Sometimes a student may leave because for other situations, maybe they have to go to work to help their families. Maybe they have decided that college isn't for them at this point and that they're waiting. But there are a lot of, I guess we could call them factors in society and the economy that have come into play here. But at the same time, we are trying very hard to make sure that all our students have the support they need so they can matriculate and graduate. And we do pretty well with that. We're still higher than a lot of our peers, but we're actively seeking to raise that level so that we can all help every student that comes through achieve their goal.
And I appreciate that. I've just specifically, you know, it looked like in 2012 it was 85% for six-year graduation and then 73%. And I'm not just talking about St. Mary's. I think this is a broader issue, but in order to try to address it, knowing specifically what's different with what those students were dealing with in 2012 versus what the situation is now, because a lot of what you said are a whole host of issues. Yes. But specifically, is there one area or two that is impacting this this graduation rate, right? So
Sure.
that you can have targeted solutions.
Sure. Well, again, one of the issues is that sometimes students fall behind in their coursework. And so we've started the winter session, and that's a relatively new addition to help students catch up if they're missing credits or need to repeat a course, or if they need just extra courses to get them to over the graduation goal. So that is helping. And also, we've changed the way that we advise in the recent past so that now we have more support for our students, including academic success advisors. So with all of that combined, we feel like we're going to get that graduation up, that rate up better than we've had. A lot has changed in the intervening 14 years since 2012. And certainly the pandemic was no friend to higher education, and we're still seeing some of those results. I believe last year, or this current year's class was the last that was in high school during the pandemic. So we'll begin to see some changes as we put more distance between the pandemic era and now, and also be able to have our students be more engaged on campus while they're there, because we know that contributes to success. So I would venture to say that 14 years ago, well before the pandemic, the level of engagement was probably much higher than it is after post-pandemic. But anyone else have anything they'd like to say on that? Let's see, Aaron, you were probably not too far.
Sure, I'm Aaron Tamarchio, a member of the board, but I'm also a parent of a student that graduated in 2023. She was part of the pandemic cohort. And as a parent, I can tell you it was a lot to try to get her through that 4-year period. When the instruction and the entire college experience was different. So, you know, she ended up actually having to go an extra semester. She actually dropped out for a semester and then went back to complete her coursework after taking some time off. So it was very disruptive just during that period. So just from personal experience as a parent and obviously an alum too of the college.
Thank you so much. No, I understand that. I was actually teaching during that time, and it was very challenging. But just for your reference, the graduation rate looks like it's decreasing from 2012 to 2014, which is prior to the pandemic, and then it's pretty steady around 60 to 57%. So it's from 2014. It's just a question. I'm trying to figure out what happened between 2012 and 2014 that it went down, and then it sort of stayed around 60%-ish for the last 10 years.
Okay.
So it's just if maybe there's a follow-up there, but I'm just curious if you knew.
Sure. So it was really that 2-year period you were asking. I'm sorry, I thought you were asking until the current time. I don't know. I wasn't around here at St. Mary's at that time, but who knows? It could have been some sort of change in curriculum or change in something, but we can certainly try to go back and figure out.
I was just sitting here thinking, because I don't know if this is something our analyst has access to, I'm sure you do, but I wonder if the composition of the student body had the same concentration of first generation students then that they do now, because it's really kind of tied back to one of your previous responses about affordability, right? There are many bright people who have it's a zigzag sometimes to complete college. I know I'm a first-gen college, graduate, and so I came in with 12 credits from AP classes, so that's pretty much like a full semester. So even though I dropped out for a semester because of financial issues, I was still able to graduate on time, but it was really hard just to afford to be in school. And so if you have a greater proportion of students that maybe have those needs than you had in 2014, I'm just theorizing that could be part of it. And I think our conversation around persistence in higher ed does sometimes seem not to really be at the intersection of affordability. It's like, oh, they're just not persisting, when honestly, I think it's often a financial problem. I'm just making stuff up here,
That's what we found, that it's often financially related.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I think that's exactly what I was thinking as well. If you look at the long-term trends of the class cohorts, I'm a first-generation and Pell-eligible student myself. Those proportions of the classes have grown significantly from 2012 to now. I think they've almost doubled.
Okay.
Yes, Delegate Forbes.
I just wanted to chime in that I believe, like in the 1980s, a Pell Grant would pay tuition, room, and board and part of your books.
Correct.
And they certainly haven't kept pace with the needs of students.
Very important point, Delegate Forbes. Like when people say they worked their way through college, but they worked at Wendy's. Yeah, I can't do that now. So any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you so much. Happy to see you as always. Thank you to the team. And thank you, students, for coming out here. We don't always get to see the students and the recipients of the investments in person, so it is our pleasure to see you as well. That concludes the budget hearing for the College of St. Mary's. So we just have one last but not least budget presentation, and that will be for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. And we'll hear from our analyst, Catherine Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Catherine Barber, and I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis for the Interagency Commission on School Construction's fiscal 27 allowance. In fiscal 27, IAC's operating budget decreases by nearly $503,000, or 2.6% to $18.7 million after accounting for a $291,000 proposed deficiency appropriation. Exhibit 1 on page 2 breaks out agency spending by purpose. Slightly more than half of the proposed fiscal 27 budget, or $10 million, supports school safety grants. These grants fund security improvements like surveillance systems, access control systems, emergency generators, door hardware, and other security modifications in public schools. The remaining $8.7 million supports administrative expenses, mostly related to personnel. As you can see in Exhibit 2 on page 3, the main driver of the decrease is a one-time special fund transfer from the Maryland Energy Administration in the prior fiscal year for ongoing public school decarbonization efforts. Moving on to personnel on page 4, IAC has 3 vacancies out of its 44 positions, of which 2 have been vacant for over a year. IAC reported that it has plans to recruit for its capital construction engineer vacancy, which has been vacant the longest. But because of those plans, DLS recommends abolishing a different long-term vacancy for an administrative specialist position that has been open since last February. The key observation section of this analysis begins at the bottom of page 4. Chapters 166 and 167 of 2024 required IAC to establish facility mapping standards that ensure that school maps are consistent and accessible, primarily for use by first responders during emergencies. In June 2025, IAC published the finalized guidelines, which were established in collaboration with the Maryland Center for School Safety, the Department of Information Technology, and Emergency Services. The summaries of the finalized standards are listed on page 5. Key observation 2 starts at the bottom of page 5 and discusses IAC's statewide facility assessment report, which is mandated by Chapter 32 of 2022. The report assesses the condition of critical systems, environmental quality, the state of lighting and acoustics, the presence of hazardous materials like asbestos and lead, and specialized safety and sanitary equipment. IAC measures the condition of critical systems, including HVAC, roofs, and life safety systems like fire alarms, by using the Facility Condition Index, or FCI. An FCI under 45% generally signifies satisfactory condition, while scores over 60% indicate critical issues. Across all their critical systems, public school facilities averaged about 55% on the Facility Condition Index. A number of facilities are also facing issues with temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide levels, acoustics, lighting, asbestos, and lead paint, though it's important to note that no buildings had to close due to the presence of hazardous materials. LEAs also reported that 316 school buildings lack key safety and sanitary equipment in their health rooms, labs, and kitchens as required by local statute. Exhibit 3 on page 6 shows overall facility rating results from fiscal 21 to 25. More than a quarter of Maryland's public schools are not in satisfactory condition as of fiscal 25. Altogether, IAC's report reinforces concerns about school conditions and building safety across the state. The recommended action to abolish one PIN is on page 8, and there's one update on page 9 about IAC's cloud-based asset library. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Barber, for your analysis. Are there any questions for her? Seeing none, we'll welcome Cassandra Vizcarra. Oh, and I didn't see Alex Dunn, who's also here. I thought he wouldn't be here. Okay,
We
great.
were tricking you by sitting
tricking me. I was
separately.
like, ah, okay, great. Good to see you both.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. First, thank you for this opportunity to respond to questions and comment on the operating budget of the IAC. And more importantly, I thank you for your strong and continuing support for public school construction in Maryland. I also thank Catherine Barber and the DLS staff for their excellent analysis and support. The Commission and their staff are tasked with a significant mission to provide leadership and resources to LEAs, local education agencies, to develop and sustain school facilities so that all Maryland public school students, teachers, administrators, and staff have safe, educationally sufficient environments in which to teach and learn. Each year, this mission has included approving designs and contracts for hundreds of school district construction projects, managing an annual average of about $800 million in capital grants to school districts, directly visiting and assessing more than 500 school facilities a year, and providing ongoing technical assistance to 24 school districts and the Maryland School for the Blind. Over the past 2 years, technical assistance has increased, and we have also added preparing a large amount of data and policy options for the General Assembly to support its decision-making around school construction funding. As I've reported to this committee in past months, the challenges that Maryland school districts, counties, and the state face together in affording healthy, safe, and educationally sufficient school facilities are significant, to put it mildly. The Commission and I greatly appreciate your continued support for our support to you and the local jurisdictions. Your support has enabled the Commission to facilitate some essential three-party collaborative efforts in which school districts, their counties or city, and the state have either improved the condition, and I'm really pointing at the future condition of their school facilities even more than the present condition, increased the affordability of those facilities, or both. And with your continued support, we will expand this work to include more of Maryland's counties and get closer to the future that we all want for our public school students and staffs and the communities that public schools anchor. In our written testimony, we responded to the analyst questions and provided additional information that may be of interest to members of the subcommittee. Now, Deputy Director Vizcarra will respond directly to the 2 questions posed by DLS, and will stand for any questions you might have.
Good afternoon. Alex did a great job describing the breadth of the work that we do. So first, I will respond to the recommendation for the abolishment of one PIN. For context, the IAC currently has 44 PINs, and we're operating on an extremely lean operating budget. When you compare it to our capital outlay every year, it's less than 1%, which is obviously considerably lower than the 5 to 12% overhead rate of most typical governmental or nonprofit organizations. Because of the specialized nature of the work, sometimes hiring our staff does take a little bit longer. We also have experienced expanded responsibilities that resulted in a need for us to reclassify or change some of our positions. The administrative specialist position is one of those that actually just got reclassified to an administrator 1 position, which is part of the delay. We were working with DBM to appropriately classify that position. The reclassifications of vacant pins at the IEC is performed to attempt to balance the shifting needs and workload of our agency. So for that reason, we do respectfully, of course, disagree with the recommendation by DLS to abolish the position. On the outstanding reports, I am happy to say the budget analysis notes that there are 5 reports outstanding. We've been working to eliminate our reporting backlog, partially because of vacancies in our finance division, which would be exacerbated by the abolishment of the pen we were just talking about. But we are doing a final review of our 3 quarterly financial reports. I expect to submit those tomorrow. And we did deliver to DLS this morning the combined solar and alternative energy report that does represent 2 of the outstanding reports. So we will have all of those in before we testify to your counterpart on the Senate side on Monday. I also want to note that the deadlines for the quarterly financial reports literally are the closing of the reporting period that those reports represent. In our departmental bill that you all heard a little over a week ago, Alex presented to you on, the deadlines would be extended by 60 days. I anticipate that with passage of that bill, we're going to be able to get all of our reports on in time in the future.
Thank you for your collective testimony. Any questions for the panel? Delegate Tolles.
Madam Chair, do you have a list of schools where you have completed or still working on the school safety updates? The updates, the floor plans, the mapping. Would like to see those schools that you have completed.
So not with us today, but happy to get that information and provide it to you and the committee. If I can just add a little bit of detail there, that school mapping program was set up as an optional voluntary thing for school districts. And to date, about half the school districts in the state have taken advantage of that program, applying to funding, to the Center for School Safety for funding, and then using the funding to do the mapping. My understanding from MCSS is that about 900 schools in the state have been mapped so far out of approximately 1,360. So it's not all of them, but it's a good percentage of them so far. But again, school districts are not required to map their schools. They're simply offered that as support if they choose to.
Okay, thank you, yes. And if you could break it down per county, it'd be an easier read. And I just would like to know, where they are with those plans, which schools have them, just as a continued learning tool for me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions? We appreciate your testimony and giving us some grounding. The only quick question I had was, it said that in the written testimony that you intend to work with DBM to resolve the issue of the frozen position in the next 6 months, or have you already initiated that contact?
We have already completed the reclassifications.
So it's completely.
Now we need to submit hiring freeze exceptions because of the budgetary freeze.
Understood. As you can understand, we're just here trying to trim fat, but we don't want to trim the bone. So thank you so much for all that you do. There's no other witnesses today, so that concludes not only your budget hearing, but today's budget hearings for EED.